Eric, do you know what I love to have for breakfast?
A big old bowl of J.O.'s. I just imagine you have a box of cereal with your face on it.
I was going to say reviews on Apple Podcasts. They give me more sustenance than anything else in my life. They bring me energy. They get me ready for the day ahead. And you know, Eric, it's been a minute since I had a good bowl of reviews on Apple Podcasts.
Sometimes I read my reviews right before I go to bed, just so I can dream good dreams at night.
If you want to help me start the day right and help my self-esteem while also helping us in the eyes of Apple, please leave a review for Upside on Apple Podcasts. If you have an iPhone, even if you don't use Apple Podcasts, we would love for you to submit a review about why you love Upside. And if you don't have an iPhone, if you're an Android user, that's okay too.
And I wanted Protoball to be like athletic ninjas in outer space. And I wanted the player to be able to feel like they can just bounce off a wall, kick, flip, jump, bam, do some awesome spin, throw it in the goal, and just do everything they want without being inhibited.
The startup investment landscape is changing, and world-class companies are being built outside of Silicon Valley. We find them, talk with them, and discuss the upside of investing in them. Welcome to Upside.
Woo! Hello, and welcome to the Upside Podcast, the first podcast finding upside outside of Silicon Valley. I'm Eric Hornung, and I'm accompanied by my co-host, Mr. One and Done himself, Jay Klaus. How is it going, Jay? How you feeling?
Are you talking about how well I performed on my high school ACT?
That is exactly what I was referring to. How'd you know?
Well, it's just something we talk about a lot, is how well I did on my ACT compared to you.
It's literally, I think, probably 90% of our off-air conversation is you reminding me of how you performed on your ACT. Yeah.
I was at my parents' house this weekend getting my vaccine in my hometown, and they reminded me how well I did on my ACT. In fact, I did so well that they bought us a new TV as a family because I hit the goal that they set for me.
And you only did it one time, right?
I only did it one time. I only had to take the test one time. I did not want to take a 7-hour test 2 times. But Eric, I'm being very tongue-in-cheek. I know you're actually talking about this vaccine that is the aforementioned Johnson & Johnson.
AKA the J&J.
The J&J. I'm very confused about Johnson & Johnson because in my mind, Johnson & Johnson is spelled Johnsson and Johnson. But on all the paperwork, the shot was spelled Janssen. It's like Johnson that way, like a German Johnson. So I'm very confused. It's like the Johnson & Johnson shot.
Huh. I have no input on that other than what an interesting way to spell Johnson. I didn't even know that you could spell it that way in Germanic.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not Germanic, but yeah, point being, I now have vaccination in my veins, antibodies in my body. I had pretty bad day yesterday. So did friend of the podcast, Mallory, fiance of the J. Friend of the podcast, Mallory, yesterday also was down for the count with 100+ degree fever. But today we're back. We are back, baby.
Do you feel like you're good at taking shots? Like that's one of your things?
Depends on the style of shot. As far as like needles in the arm, yes. As far as tequila, sometimes. As far as shots on goal with like a soccer ball, no.
Well, how about virtual shots on goal? Like if you were playing like Rocket League or, any kind of sports game.
Hilariously bad at Rocket League, but it is a lot of fun. And I'm excited that today we get to dive into this world of video game sports, talking with Zachary Spradlin, one of the creators of Protoball. Protoball is a futuristic first-person sports game merging basketball, soccer, and high-tech style. Players athletically jump, slide, run, and dash around the arena, trying to pass the Protoball through the opponent's goal. Eric, this looks pretty fun. I don't know if you've looked at the videos of this that they have on their Instagram and their Twitter. Looks like a pretty fun game to play.
I think I would have a lot of fun playing it. Full disclosure, I've kind of dabbled around with it so far. I've downloaded it, but I have not actually launched it and played. So maybe after this episode, I'll put some screen capture of me playing up on Twitter.
Speaking of launch, it seems as if this current beta version of Protoball was launched in December of 2020 after a failed Kickstarter in 2018. But it seems like Zach and the team continue to press on and build this thing. And why not, Eric? If you're going to build a game, you might as well build that game in this one life that you had to live, living it the best way that you can.
And if you want to learn more about living the one life you have to live the best way you can go to upside.fm/ethos to learn more from our friends at Ethos Wealth Management. JR, did you get into video games over the course of this pandemic?
A little bit. The first thing that happened was I bought a refurbished Xbox 360 because my Xbox 360 was broken. And then I started to dive deep into Red Dead Redemption because I loved it. And then that refurbished Xbox 360 broke just as I imagine it did before it was refurbished. And that was kind of that. Then you said to me, why did you do that when you could have just gotten an Xbox One and played your Xbox 360 games? And I said, oh. And then I bought an Xbox One. And now I have Red Dead Redemption 2. And it is overwhelming the things that I can do in it. Like I try to play it, but I just get overwhelmed by all of the things I could do. Like besides doing the missions, I could go and like try to get this ridiculous bear man costume. If I go and kill enough critters and bring it to the right guy, he'll make me like this cool costume out of it. It's just a lot. So I got really into Madden again on the Xbox One, but I'm like season 6 into a franchise, and most of the players are now computer generated players that came out of the draft. You lose a little bit of interest.
You know what's been overwhelming to me about the video game space during this pandemic? It hasn't been the actual playing video games. It's been all of the stuff that's been happening around the tools for creators and video games and monetization and the spikes in Twitch. I feel like the gaming space in general is on a bit of a upswing here, and I'm really excited that we're going to talk to someone who's actually building a game.
And right after our conversation with Chris Bergman of Geily Games / The Fun Midwest, we're having a little bit of a gaming blitz here, Eric.
Ooh, that's a double entendre. NFL Blitz, great game.
Great game. Well, we would love to hear your thoughts on this episode as we get into it here with Zach. You can tweet at us at UpsideFM or email us hello@upside.fm. Let us know what games you play. Let us know if there's an indie game that you're getting into or you're anticipating. Maybe we can go and talk to more indie game developers before the release. Could be kind of fun. Either way, just tweet at us at UpsideFM, and we'll get into that interview with Zach right after this. This episode is sponsored by Fundboard. Fundboard is a free tool to help you find startup investors and manage your fundraising process. Fundboard helps you to find not just the right firm, but the right person at the right firm. Fundboard makes it easy to search, save, and share. You can search thousands of investors ranked by how well they match your startup. You can save them to your Fundboard to create your list of targeted investors, and you can share your Fundboard with your network to game plan how you'll approach investors directly. You can build a tailor-fit list of startup investors in minutes with Fundboard, and you can learn more at upside.fm/fundboard. That's upside.fm/fundboard, and the link is in the show notes.
On Upside, we like to start with a background of the founders. So can you tell us about the history of Zach?
Yeah, it's a long one. It starts when I was born. And when I was a teenager, about 11 or 12, I guess, my father started his own business. And that really kind of instilled this entrepreneurial spirit in me. This idea that nobody else is going to achieve your dreams or make you wealthy or do it for you, that you have to do it yourself. And so ever since I was 11 or 12, I've had that spirit instilled in me. And I've been about 20 different people since then. So that passion, that drive to start something has been broadly varied across the board, depending on how old I was. But there was always this common thread of creation, something creative, and something that could tell a story and possibly help instill ideas in the next generation. Whether that would have been a book or a movie or a game or maybe all of the above, I've always wanted to start something and do something and create something that was amazing. And so I've tried a lot throughout the years, a couple false starts. I think I've really landed on something beautiful here with what I've got going on.
What was one of those past creations that either really taught you something about making or like really stands with you now as something where, oh, I really learned a lot from that experience?
Definitely film school and then a failed Kickstarter campaign. What I learned was you can't do everything yourself. And even if you think your idea is the best, there's probably a better one out there, or at least other people have value. And I actually left film school because I was a little frustrated with the politics of just networking. And it wasn't so much even about film. And that experience really taught me to be better about relationships and collaborating and just empowering others and not being such a control freak.
Tell me more about this failed Kickstarter campaign.
So a while back, I mean, it might have been 2 years ago, we tried to do a little Kickstarter, I guess it was a little Kickstarter campaign for Protoball. We were in the pre-alpha stage, so that was a build of the game that is even before what we're playing now. I had thought, because I knew inside how great Protoball was, the big potential of it, and I created it because it was something I wanted to exist that did not exist. So I was sure that Kickstarter was going to succeed because we kind of took a route that I don't see as frequently, which is we developed a product, but we didn't have a shiny marketing image. And I think we did that backwards. If we would have had something much shinier and prettier looking, maybe we would have seen more success because we wouldn't have relied on other people to fill in the blanks as much, because their imagination is not going to fill it in the same way my imagination is. So maybe I did a poor job of expressing or showing people what I had here and what it was going to be and why you should invest in it via Kickstarter. We did okay, but it did fail. So I learned a lot about how to talk to people, possibly how to present your ideas, and also what not to rely on as an assumption, which is nothing. Rely on nothing as an assumption.
Tell me about the like hopes and expectations you had for that Kickstarter. Did you think that by having a successful Kickstarter, would that have allowed you to do this full time, or what was the goal of the campaign?
The goal of the campaign was to take this passion and turn it into a full-time career. We've been doing all of this in our spare time. We all have full-time jobs and families. So we've done all of this late at night, whenever we could. And for us, we all know that as soon as we can change our salary from, whatever our job is to this, then the quality of this game and the amount of development in this game is just going to exponentially curve upwards. Just because of how much we've done in so little and with so little, that should we have gotten the funds and the resources needed, then yeah, we could just launch and become a full-time game dev studio.
You're using the word we a lot. So talk
Yes.
to me about who is we.
Okay, so this idea, well, maybe I should backtrack. The idea started.
Maybe you should tell us what Protoball is and how that's kind of evolved.
Okay, let's start with the concept. So when I bought my first house, my only house, I was able to set my dev rig, my gaming rig back up, my big PC, because in the apartments, my wife wasn't going to allow that. So I was so happy to have my gaming PC back, and I was playing Counter-Strike a lot, and I actually got my wife to play, and long story short, she enjoyed it, but there's no way she's going to be competitive in Counter-Strike. Just not accurate enough for those headshots. So I kept thinking about a game that would make me feel as good as I do when I win in Counter-Strike, and that I could also play with my wife, some competitive casual game. So the main key aspect is first-person shooter. That's so much fun. Point and click, shoot. That mechanic is just hard-coded in every gamer these days. So I ended up coming up with kind of this mixed bag of games that all came together to be one, Protoball. It's a first-person shooter, basketball, soccer game set in the future. So I started developing it myself. Like I said before, I had this DIY, do everything myself mentality. I quickly realized I'm going to need help. And that's why when you see the credits of a major game, it seems way too long. There's too many people working on that. So I started hiring some freelancers and doing some work with them. Some of the big names in the Unreal Engine freelance community. That went well for a time, but as I learned more and saw how patchy these freelancers were putting things together, I quickly realized I needed a real team. And I happened to find, luckily, a real team. A lot of other guys were pretty frustrated with the state of the Unreal Engine templates, because a lot of people put templates out and you drag and drop your own assets. They were frustrated with the whole state of gaming. So 5 of us got together and agreed, let's make a good game. We all know what we want. Every gamer has the same complaints, yet they keep playing the same rehashed games over and over and over. So we thought, let's make a game. And we called it Project GG, Project Good Game. And it worked. And we shot each other in the face and we did all kinds of fun things. And we took that, the 5 of us, and built that as a core FPS template. So with our core game base, if you take Protoball off the top of it, we have a core working multiplayer competitive template that you can drag and drop any asset you want in there. You can make it fantasy, you can make it sci-fi, whatever. So because we had this experience, all of us separately, of dealing with all these mismatched problems in the industry of making these things connect, we decided to do it ourselves, and we banded together, equal shares. We were all comrades, and 5 of us just equally sharing everything, and we equally do everything. Some people actually do more than others, as always, but it's working out really well. So the we is 5 of us that we found, that I kind of found in a Discord randomly. One day, some guy wanted to do a game jam. So we all got together, and I ended up poaching a couple of those guys.
You said, I want to clear something up. You said FPS. I'm assuming that means first-person shooter.
Yes.
So you're saying that you guys developed an underlying template that can be used as a first-person shooter, that other people can take that template and build their own first-person shooter games on top of.
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, but it's working in multiplayer. It uses Amazon Web Services, GameLift. So anytime a user searches for a match, it'll look and see if there is one. And if there's not one, it'll spin it up. And now that technology has been made for games, and it scales up. I know in the early days, a lot of big games like Rocket League would use it. I don't know what they're doing these days, but in the early days, a lot of them would use it just to auto scale, because you never know if you blow up, you're going to need more servers.
Let me ask a dumb question. Unreal Engine, you mentioned that they also had templates.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you could drag and drop. Like, could Jay and I, as game
non-Unreal Engine developers,
although Jay is wearing an Unreal shirt,
I saw
right
that.
now,
I like it.
could we use those Unreal templates? And what's the difference between those templates and those templates that you're talking about? Could we use those as well? Like, how does that work?
Anybody can make anything and put it on the Unreal Engine marketplace. Epic Games themselves, the company, I don't know that they're putting out any templates themselves. They give you the engine and all the tools, and we're grateful for that. Other people can make their own mini games or just small games, and things are gray box and they don't have real assets, so we call them templates, but they actually work as standalone games. And yes, you could. However, most of those seem so poorly. The ones that we had used, I don't want to step on toes out here. I don't know what's out there these days. But the ones that we had used in the past were so terrible. Heavy, they weren't lightweight, they weren't flexible, they weren't modular. You got really locked into whatever that developer had built in a specific way. What we did with ours, and I was adamant about this so we mentioned the failed Kickstarter. After that happened, we scrapped that whole project and then built this from the ground up fresh, because we knew everything, all the problems we had ran into before. And we solved all those problems building this new one. So you could do it, but it is a toss-up as to how good it's going to be. And with ours, you can make literally anything, from a medieval slasher to a Counter-Strike to an Apex Legends. Any competitive online game you see out there, you'll be able to take our base and create that. And the hard part of linking the back-end systems, because that's where most people fail. They might have a good template in Unreal, but to make it work online and scale and use Amazon Web Tech and all of those things, that can be challenging. And a lot of people use Unreal, like you guys, would probably dive straight into blueprints, so you don't have to type code with syntax. You just drag and drop nodes. It's visual scripting, and it's amazing. But there are just some things you can't do with that. So we did it and then exposed it to blueprints. And that's what our plugin does. It connects Unreal to Amazon. So if anybody adopts our platform or ecosystem or whatever we have here, they'll be able to you guys could just drag and drop your own models, create your own guns if you wanted to do guns or whatever, because everything's involved in there. You could do guns or slashing or sports. And then you would be able to configure on our back end, just plug in a couple, it was equivalent to just some key that says this is my game, and app IDs, whatever tokens. And then you'd be up and running very quickly, very easily, and be scalable.
How important is it for gaming companies that are building gaming infrastructure, so like Epic or like you guys, of any sort, to have a hit game? I think about Epic, and would Epic be Epic without Fortnite? Would people have dove into Unreal Engine without the success of Fortnite? Is there a trade-off there, or do you not need to have a hit game to build that?
No, I think you need a hit game, actually. Now, I, always being that DIY kind of guy, I was actually into Unreal back when you had to pay for it. I think it was $19.99 a month. So I was back in 4.4 at least. So for me, I didn't need that. But after they proved their concept with Fortnite, we saw epic growth. Pun slightly intended. They saw epic growth. I did not. They did. Blew up so big. And
Concept being that other Fortnite was developed by somebody else using their underlying engine.
no, Epic Games themselves made Fortnite with Unreal Engine. And because they made the engine, they know all the tips and tricks. And through making Fortnite, they put out a lot of great video tutorials and webinars and any stream where they would show you what they did in Fortnite. And that's great because I know the one that really opened my eyes was they had this thing called One Mesh to rule them all. I want to put Protoball on mobile. Mobile doesn't have the same graphics cards I have. So to be able to scale down to a phone from a really good PC, it was awesome to see how Epic did that with Fortnite so that we can recreate that in our projects.
Take me back to when you were trying to get these other 4 guys aligned with creating Protoball. How did you explain this to them in their head? Because you're throwing words out there like it's a first-person shooter where there's a ball. And to me, those are like very interesting concepts to mash together that are hard for me to understand what that looks like.
Yeah, so I didn't actually tell the guys in the game jam about Protoball for a little while because it was like my secret baby. And I was making this first-person shooter with them. Now, I'll pitch how Protoball is nonviolent and promotes positivity and things like that. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy getting a headshot with a gun in a video game. So we were making a game. I was going to have one basically more gritty for adults and one a little more broadcastable without the violence warning. So we joined that game jam. I joined that game jam. And we were just doing it to have fun. And it kind of grew. I was like, well, I like these guys. They're on the same wavelength as me. So I pitched it to him. I said, I have this other project I've been working on. And if you guys want to get involved in that, come join me. Let's do this all together. We'll be under the umbrella Studio Z, which I made a while back just to have in case I did something like this. So I already had the LLC and had the structure. Everything was there. And basically, they were all like, I didn't even have to persuade them. They heard the concept. And they're like, we're in. Let's go. We'll pause on this other thing because it was basically done. The game jam achieved its purpose. We made a fun game. And I was about to do that Kickstarter. So I brought everybody over and we started working on Protoball. And the rest is history, I guess.
Can you talk a little bit more about what a game jam is? Like, is that a common thing in the industry?
It is, especially since Unreal made it easy. A lot of times people will, for 1 month or some set duration of time, there'll be a prompt, make a game, and it will have to involve, I don't know, a pink triangle and a bouncy ball in outer space. And then you'll see a group of people, a bunch of different groups of people will get together, take that prompt, and then make some kind of weird game out of it. And they have like a week or just some short amount of time to do it. So it's quick and it's fun. And they just jam, like a jam session in music, but with games. And it's actually really popular. You see a lot of cool, unique ideas come out of these game jams.
Is there a prize usually?
Sometimes there is. It depends on who's hosting it. I know Epic Games will do month or yearly game jams. I think they have a spring game jam every year. Other organizations will do it as well, and they might throw prizes. Community will always vote on their favorite game, and often it's a less competitive and more cooperative and fun, I think.
Is it ever done in such a way that it feels like almost like R&D for the organization that's throwing it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you'll see like art challenges where somebody, the prompt is make a bunch of, I don't know, Western art or Native American or whatever. And then you see somebody's making a Cowboys and Indian game a couple months later. That does happen.
What makes a good game?
It has to be immersive and fun for me. It has to feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, I don't care how pretty it is. It really has to feel good to me. Seamless, I think. Being able to athletically move around and do what you want to do without being inhibited, I think makes games fun anyway.
That's interesting. I saw that word in your description of Protoball. It says players athletically jump, slide, run, and dash around the arena. And I was like, that's an interesting thing to call out. Like I've never seen the word athletically used in the description of a game before. So can you talk about that and try to marry this idea of it has to be immersive and feel good with how you're developing Protoball?
Yeah, so the athletic thing comes from, and I don't want to say the name of the game because I like them and they're fun, but there's a really popular game a while back. All the streamers played it. It's a battle royale game, and it was a little clunky, and it was really fun because the concept was great. It was Great concept. They had done it with Unreal Engine to a great scale. The concept had existed before, but not like this, not as accessible. And the game was great, but man, did you feel like you were walking through mud or tripping over things. You wanted to get through a door, but you were jamming your shoulder. It was just not fluid. It was immersive, but it felt clunky and you got stuck. Sometimes you were fighting against the game itself, not the players. And that was frustrating. And the term that came to mind was just athletic. If I'm going to be this killer BR warrior, I need to be running, jumping fences, doing some Rambo things. So that really stuck with me. And I was developing Protoball during that time. And I wanted Protoball to be like athletic ninjas in outer space. And I wanted the player to be able to feel like they can just bounce off a wall, kick, flip, jump, bam, do some awesome spin, throw it in the goal, and just do everything they want without being inhibited. And that's part of the immersion, because as soon as you think you're walking through a door, but your character bumps an invisible collision box on something and you get stopped dead in your tracks, that breaks immersion. And now you have to fight against the game to get in the door or whatever is causing you problems.
Describe a scene from Protoball for me, so people watching this who haven't seen the same short clips on your Twitter that I've seen can kind of picture what this looks like.
Yeah, so it's a lot like, if you can imagine, American Ninja Warrior type athletes doing soccer and basketball with no gravity inhibitions. You can jump, dash, which is kind of like an in-air sprint where you just move forward real fast. So you'll see players, the ball drops in the middle, and all the players generally rush straight for the ball. You'll see some of the more strategic players getting in position to do other things, but often it's a mad rush for the ball. And then you can shoot these shields, which have these explosions. The idea was kind of like pool or billiards, to where you could deflect the ball out of midair and spin it off somewhere and do some trick shots with that. So people use those shields to deflect the ball. So right off the bat, it's pretty chaos. But then you'll see somebody gets the ball and it goes back and forth a little bit. And it gets pretty intense. If the players are good, nobody scores very much. But if all the players are bad, you get a high score game. So you'll see players hitting each other, tackling each other, rushing for the ball, running away from each other, shooting the ball down court. The ball often gets intercepted a few times before somebody makes a shot. So everybody's vying for position, and the spectator will see it so there's a Spectator Camera. We made this so that you could broadcast eSports easier. We've experienced a lot of games where broadcasting was not that great. So we wanted to make it kind of easy for an ESPN type organization to broadcast this with all the stats. So the spectator will be able to fly around the arena and see it from all kinds of angles, zoom in, zoom out, follow the ball so the camera won't stop looking at the ball, which makes it real easy for like a grandma who's never played games to watch the esport and actually understand what's going on.
So there's one ball.
Yes.
And there are goals.
On either side.
And two teams.
Two teams.
Okay, sounds like sports so far. I get this. I'm tracking.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the actions that I can take. It sounds like I can run. You said it's like basketball and soccer, so there must be a throwing component. Yes. And also a kicking component?
Yeah, so you can slide on the ground, and that slide will tackle players. If you hit a player while you're sliding, you'll knock them down, and if they have the ball, you'll force a fumble. And that's the same as dashing. Dashing is like sliding, but in air. So you can do that. You can grab the ball. You can steal the ball from each other. You can just walk up to a player and take the ball right out of their hands. So that's why they have to keep a distance from each other, and that keeps things dynamic. You can shoot a shield, like I said. You can pull a shield out. It's basically a full body shield, and it dissolves after a time because we found players would just sit in the goal and goaltend with that shield. So now you have to shoot the shield. And that's really fun because you can shoot the ball out of midair. If somebody's got a 3-pointer from downtown, you can still save the goal if you're not in position.
That's cool.
So you can score 3, 2, and 1-pointers depending on how close you are, because we found a lot of people would just run up and do layups nonstop, and that got old. So we were rewarding people for taking big shots. You can curve the ball now. We added that function in, which has really changed the game big time, especially from a defender point of view, because you don't necessarily know that ball is going to curve around you. And those make for some awesome trick shots. What else can you do? You can.
Where does the shooter come in? The first person shooter aspect. Do I have a gun with me while I'm doing this?
No. The early concept did have a proto gun, which went on the arm and would grab the ball, because I was in my head. I'm very utilitarian. I have to figure out how this would actually work. Lately, I just have this quantum fairy dust that I throw at it to explain anything away. But so you pick the ball up and you'll see the ball in front of you. Now our animator wants to make the player do some cool stuff like bounce the ball back and forth and dribble and whatever. None of those will affect the mechanics because the ball will always shoot from the same position on your screen And we have to do that for esports consistency. I'm very adamant that everything we do maintains a consistency so that athletes aren't learning a new sport each map they play. So when you grab the ball, you'll see it, and you have a crosshair, and it has physics. So the ball drops. The ball is heavy. It's not like a bullet. So you have to lob the ball and aim it right. And depending on how far you are, you're going to have to adjust further. So there's a little skill there that you have to do. And you just click to shoot the ball. And that shoots the ball right where your crosshair is at. You can click and hold to do a full charge shot, which is like a bullet. And then you can lob the ball, which is a big, high arcing little. It doesn't go very far, but it's really good for pump fakes and tricking and passing and even other shots. I've seen people lob the ball in front of them and then shoot it with their own shield, which launches it down. And people are doing crazy trick shots these days.
How do you think about, you mentioned that less skilled players will have higher scores and more skilled players will have lower scores. How do you think about audience viewability in terms of like, we saw, or in the United States, the American appetite for things is like score heavy. We saw football go from like an average score of 23 to 20 to like 27 to 24 or something crazy in the last couple of years. How do you guys think about manufacturing the amount of scoring that happens in a game for the audience's sake?
Well, we can't manage or prevent anything or force it. We really like to let things grow and evolve naturally or maybe unnaturally. What will happen and what we've seen happen is when you have teammates and more players, the score goes down. When it's 1v1, that's not really a great fun game, not to me. Some people like it, but I don't like 1v1s. And that's where you'll see 1v1s and 2v2s, you'll see higher scores when the teams are unbalanced. So to balance this, we don't have any matchmaking. We have matchmaking, but it's not based on skill yet. It'll just match you if you're looking for a game. So we'll have matchmaking based on skill. But what I'm really excited to see are professional esports teams, the ones that are playing in collegiate Rocket League or any professional esports team. I'm really interested in seeing how the top level gamers play against each other in this game, because the dynamics, the possibilities, I can't even imagine them all. I've seen people do things I never imagined in this game. And to see what the players come up with is always one of the most fun things for a game dev, I think.
I hear this aspiration of getting college esports players to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just an aspiration for you as a creator that will make you feel good? Or do you have aspirations for the business, the studio creating this? What are you trying to optimize for?
I want Protoball to be the ubiquitous esport on the planet. And I know it will be with the right team and support. I had this vision where, because obviously we had some podcast issues earlier because my gaming rig is a little too loud. So not everybody on the planet can afford to even dedicate one of their rooms to gaming, let alone have all this equipment. So I want to bring esports and gaming into the hands of demographics that are left behind, don't quite get to play games as much, maybe want to, but can't. And I want everybody to play Protoball, and I want everybody to have a chance to actually make it pro in Protoball, maybe make a total career for your whole life in this esports game, no matter where you're at, whether it's India, America, I don't care where you're at on the planet. If you have an internet connection and you want to play esports, I want you in Protoball. And I think that when we get global, we're going to see some really cool things happen with the game.
What are the biggest barriers to reaching that unserved audience? Why is there an unserved audience in gaming right now?
Wealth distribution and infrastructure. Now, I don't know where I stand on that politically or financially, but a lot of people can't play games because they don't have the equipment or they don't have the internet connection or they don't have whatever they need to do it. That's why we're seeing phone games blow up a lot, I think. Most people have a phone that can play games these days. So one of the things I'm excited about, and I don't know which platform we're going to commit to yet, and I'm not going to say any names because I really can't, but next generation streaming devices. There are a couple companies doing it where you just, like Netflix for games, you sign up and you can play games remotely. And actually when Cyberpunk came out, they had all those big problems, launch problems. Most of the streaming services were able to play that game better than a lot of the people I knew in real life who were trying to do it on their own computers because they just didn't have the hardware, it wasn't optimized, whatever the problem was. So these game streaming services are making games accessible to people who would have never had a chance before. And I want to embrace that. And I want anybody who wants into esports, I want them to be able to find an easy way in with Protoball. But once they're in, easy to learn, hard to master. you can't get bored of it too fast. So to rise to the top will take a lot of skill. But just to get playing with the ball, you just hop in and do that right away.
You had this failed Kickstarter. You built a team of 5 people. You guys are doing this on the side.
Mm-hmm.
When does this not become a side project?
This year. It's happening this year. I'm putting that in the universe. We're manifesting it. Within 6 months, we're full time. That's it.
And how does that happen? Because I should say I've been assuming that this is free to play. Is that true?
We've not decided, but yeah, it's going to be free to play. I mean, for the longest time, we hadn't decided. We kind of thought a premium product would be better, that you had to buy the game outright. Except when we're pitching the game, the first question everybody asks these days when you tell them about a new game is it free? And that question goes all through me because I have to pay to make this game. It costs money to make the game. So we have to find unique ways to monetize, to support everything. Amazon Web Servers, those aren't free. These people developing, they shouldn't be free, but we're all working for the end goal. So yeah, we're going to make it free to play, but to monetize, we've got some cool ideas. The traditional battle pass in most games, we're going to do a season pass, which will give you access to an official competitive league. And I want to have tiers, minor league, major league, whatever, work your way up. And that goes back to anybody on the planet being able to make a career in Protoball. It's kind of hard to get into the NFL. You have to go through a couple very specific routes to get there. There's not a whole lot of entries into the NFL other than what's been established. Esports is different. It's wide open for anybody can become a professional esport athlete. So I really want everybody to have a shot at playing in Protoball. And to do that, we are going to need help from some innovators and some visionaries who are experienced in user acquisition and marketing. The number one thing I hear from people who actually play the game is, this is so amazing, I can't wait for it to blow up, because they want to play against other people and go through the competitive ranks. So the hardest part for us is actually getting people to know that it exists and to play it, download it, and actually try it. Because once they do that, they're in. And they might not play every day for a while because it's hard to keep that player base up. So we have spikes in activity and lulls, of course. There's uptime and low time.
So what is the typical path of games that are independently developed that gain an audience? What is the path that they often take to get that critical mass of players?
That's something I've been researching and discovering, and I'm not an expert on the path they take. And I've been pitched by many PR people, marketing firms, and other people that do this, a million different ideas on how to do that. So I'm not actually totally positive. A lot of people will have a big player base or fan base already. Maybe they're doing something that's linked to something that's popular, or somehow they've accumulated an audience. And I think that's the number one thing, is you have to have the audience before you launch. Because if you buy a game and you download it and nobody's playing, that's a bummer of an experience every single time. I've done it myself. I see some cool indie game, I download it, but it's already dead. Nobody's playing it.
But it sounds like what you've mentioned here is funding the company and going full time based on customers, like your customers funding the game, funding your development. I haven't heard you talk about venture capital, for example. Is that something you've considered?
Yeah. And I've sent a pitch deck to a couple people here and there, and I get the same response every time. Looks great. Everything's awesome. Let's see how your player base grows over the next couple months, and then come back. And I'm thinking, when my player base grows over the next couple months, I'm not coming back because I don't need you. So either now or see ya. And that's kind of been what's happened.
Well, what was interesting when you're talking about how you develop this, it sounds like there's the opportunity for a product on the underlying mechanics that you built that other people can build on top of. Is that something you've explored? Is that a monetization route that happens in gaming?
So I think this is a new thing for us in gaming anyway. It's new-ish. It's not unique. I'm not going to claim that, but this is a new product. I think that is going to change gaming, especially for the Unreal and the Amazon link. You can make an Unreal game and not use Amazon, and you can use Amazon but not Unreal. AWS Game Lift is such a great service, and most gamers who run a game like this, or even Counter-Strike or Rocket League or anything like that, are going to want that scalability on their servers. It costs money to run a server. You don't want to keep a bunch of them running and nobody's playing. So as we were developing that base template that we talked about earlier, we ran into problems that every indie gamer runs into. And the same way I built that template to be modular so that you can plug and play and do whatever you want. We did the same with the back end so that we can plug and play into any kind of game, any Unreal game. And a lot of those problems we solved are not unique. Every gamer has those problems. And it started coalescing and coming together that maybe we ought to package this up as its own product as well and make Protoball the proof of concept for how it all works. And that's kind of where we're at now. Protoball is still our passion project. It's our baby. We love the game. And it's our proof of concept for how everything we've built works and integrates and scales. And I think the whole thing together is one really solid, really valuable package. And each aspect of it can be broken off and separated into its own product as well. I built the game and every system to be modular in case we wanted to do that.
Have you thought about branding that back end and integration product?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it. Actually, that back end project started because during the Kickstarter, we ran some tournaments for Protoball, which were always a blast. Got real excited and people get real competitive. But the tournaments were a little disorganized. It was nobody knew which server to join and when, and it was a big mess, and you had to have somebody organize the tournament. So we wanted to take that aspect out. So we built an automated tournament system where players can create their team, sign up, join the tournament. Everything runs automatically. A little pop-up comes and says your match is ready. Click join. The player doesn't have to do anything other than pay attention. And sometimes that's hard, but that's all they have to do. And that's how the back end started. So we named it the Pro Leagues because Protoball is a sports game, and we figured it works, and it was available. So we got the proleagues.com. The system works, and we're calling it the Pro Leagues for now, but it can be rebranded to anything should we want to. But yeah, I have thought about branding it, and I've been calling it lately anyway, it's a new thing. I've been calling it the Shopify of games, or like a game resource management platform. And that's really what it is.
How much time are you spending between game development versus business development and marketing at this point?
Most of my time is business development, and some of the other guys take care of most of the game development. It kind of split out that 3 of the guys are doing most of the in-game work, and 2 of the guys are doing most of the other work outside of it. And that works well because, like I said, my father started his business when I was a child. I've been a businessman or in business my whole life. So that aspect of this works for me. Programming Python and back-end databases, I'm going to leave that to the other guy.
So let's take us back to the beginning of the conversation for my last question. You mentioned your dad early on. You mentioned this entrepreneurial drive. And then I look at like Epic Games, and they sold to Tencent. Mm-hmm. What does like success look like for you? Is it keeping this independent? Is it exiting at some point?
Well, success would be 100,000 active users every month going at it, and then some form of official eSports league. I've said this in the past, and I guess I'll address it now because often I get a lot of, oh, this looks like Rocket League or Rocket League clone or whatever. Actually, I was in development with Protoball when Rocket League came out. And when that game came out, it demoralized me. I was destroyed. But I played it and I loved it. And I realized Rocket League really kind of blazed a trail for nonviolent sports-based esports that weren't based on a real-world sport like FIFA or NFL or whatever. They're kind of like the Elvis to Protoball's rock and roll. It's kind of how I'm looking at it. So honestly, following Psyonix and Rocket League's path to success, that would look like success to me. I would also, if it turns out that at a certain scale, we need a company or some people with more experience to come in and start running things, I'm okay with delegating and taking a back seat. If somebody can take the dream and take it further and bigger, I'm okay with that. I really just want to see the game in the hands of the people and it be a fun, successful game that people can play.
What's the timeline for Protoball? What's the state of it now? And is this publicly available?
It is publicly available. The open beta is free to download on Steam right now. The timeline is kind of flexible. It's mostly when the right pieces fall into place. I don't want to rush anything and launch because I think I have to be first to market on this day. And, I used to be real worried about being the first to market this idea because at a certain point, it was not very common. And then over the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of clones and similar ideas come out. And I would always think, damn, they're going to beat me and whatever. I don't have that mentality anymore because my vision is so grand. The scope of this game is so big that when we achieve the perfect game, nothing's going to match this. And it will be better to launch the proper product that works well than to worry about some date. Especially, I've waited this long. I can wait a little longer.
Awesome. Well, if people want to learn more about Protoball or give it a shot and play it in its current state, where should they go?
They should go to Steam. You have to. Right now, it's only on Steam on PC. So if you have Steam, which is a video game library software, everybody should know it. Just search for Protoball. Protoball. Why is it named that? Because 6 years ago or 5, whenever it was, I started learning Unreal Engine. I needed to make the prototype for my ball game, and it stuck. And that's what it's been since then.
Eric, do you know what my favorite part about podcast advertisements is?
That people actually listen to them?
Wow, you read my mind. It's almost like we've done this twice now. Yes, that people actually listen to them. Look, you're listening right now, dear listener.
And me. I'm listening too. I'm listening to you, Jay, here on the Upside Podcast.
And if you have a message that you want to share with the Upside audience, people who care about startups, investing, the middle of the country, this is a really great place to put that message.
Because people will listen to it. And if you have an event or you just want to get something out about your brand, you're hiring, this is the perfect place for the upside.fm/classifieds. That's our classified ad that can run on 1 to 5 podcast episodes.
That's right. Typically, we lock in sponsors for longer sponsorships, but we wanted to make this accessible to you and your message. If you have a message to share with our audience, go to upside.fm/classifieds and get your ad on the airwaves. All right, Eric, we just got out of the game with Zachary Spradlin, one of the creators of Protoball. Fun sounding game. Where do you want to start this fun sounding outro?
I want to use that new feature they have and curve this ball around to starting with geography. Jay, we've talked with Chris Bergman of Guiley Games. We've now talked with Zach of Protoball. Is Cincinnati a under the radar hub, emerging hub of video game development? Or are we just, a little bit of forced serendipity here?
That's a real hot take on a very small sample size, my friend. One that was created by you living in Cincinnati. I'm not going to buy that. I think I'm going to pass on that. However, it is fun to find people in these areas creating games, and I wouldn't necessarily expect anybody in Cincinnati to be creating games. It sounds pretty cool. I don't remember, did Zach say that his co-creators were also in Cincinnati?
I don't think he mentioned it. I think they met on a Discord board, so they could be anywhere in the world. I don't know. That being said, Cincinnati, upcoming hotbed for eSports and gaming. That's you heard it here first on the Upside Podcast. Sample size N equals 2.
Well, if it's like anything else, they might get the old upside bump, and people listening to the show are going to say, wow, I want to make a video game. I'm going to go to Cincinnati.
That's because, Jay, we just always see the future before it happens. That's us here on the show.
This is fun, though, especially on the tails of talking with Chris. I'm just blown away by the amount of work that goes into creating these things. And, we mentioned in the intro, and Zach brought it up in the interview, this actually began with a Kickstarter to fund the development of the game 2+ years ago and didn't happen. But that didn't stop the team. And I think that's a mark of positivity for Zach, one of our founders here behind Protoball, that even the failed Kickstarter did not stop them from doing this. They said, you know what? We believe in this game. We're going to develop it on the side as a team. And hopefully we get to a point where we can do that full time. They're still angling for that. Zach says this is the year that he hopes that becomes the reality. But to me, listening to this, that is a positive sign of Zach, the founder.
I love that there is that kind of focus around we are going full time. It wasn't, I hope that we go full time. It was, we are going full time. This is the year. We're making it happen. So I like the determination behind where Zach's head's at. I do want to understand more about their partnership and distribution strategy. I think just having the Steam platform is a difficult way to launch unless you can become a cult classic quickly. Cult classic quickly. Wow, what a
pretty
phrase.
Good alliteration, even though Q is not quite C.
Well, alliteration is just the sound of consonants, not the actual consonants themselves. How about
that? Is that true? Is that true? I believe it.
I can't confirm either, but it sounds good, doesn't it?
It sounds good. I believe it. I'll give it to you.
So I want to know more about the distribution strategy. I think they've had some conversations with some big names about placements. When we talked with Chris, he mentioned getting into the right place at the right time with the right distribution partners. And I think that's a big part of a successful game launch.
As we were talking to Zach, and I was thinking about this model of, well, could you get other gamers really invested in the success of this, people who already have a platform, by bringing them onto the cap table or making them a co-creator. I had this moment of, wow, I am the smartest man alive. And then I had the second moment quickly thereafter of, I bet everybody in the gaming world has the same idea and tries to do it. And I wonder if these gamers just get tons of inbound, like, hey, please play our game on your stream. I wonder how difficult that actually is, because that's probably not the most unique thought. I'm probably not the smartest man alive. That's probably something that people think about a lot, especially if they're already swimming in this world. So I wonder how difficult that actually is, because if it's not, it does feel like a really impactful, pretty straightforward strategy. It just kind of comes down to, I wonder how much these streamers feel like, I actually got to stay in the lane that I'm already in and not push these new games too much. I don't know.
So I have watched a good amount of streams on Facebook and Twitch this pandemic season as I'm trying to learn more and more about the video game streaming and esports space. And it's not uncommon that a streamer will say, hey, tonight at 8 p.m. I'm doing a sponsored stream, which I believe is what they're calling them, and I'm going to be playing this new game, and here it is. So that's not uncommon, but I wouldn't say it's happening more than once every couple of weeks if you watch the same streamers, and even the bigger ones. So I don't think it's overwhelming, but that could just be a price point thing. Certain games are willing to pay you enough to actually host a sponsored stream where others are not willing to pay you. So I think that exists, but I think maybe this was a call out to our audience here. Dear audience, if you know anyone who is a business manager for a top streamer or a mid-tier streamer on either Facebook or Twitch, we would love to talk to them about the business of streaming. I think that would be fascinating.
Love that. We should put that call out on Twitter too. And I wonder if, when I think about this, I actually don't think about it as a sponsored stream, because I think the real magic would be alignment and skin in the game for the streamer, so they don't have to call it sponsored. They would just be like, this is a game that I really care about, that I believe in, that I'm going to play, and that's why I'm playing it. But, there would be, of course, they would announce their involvement in the game at different points in time. And so I wonder how skeptical their audience would be of, do you really love this game, or are you just pushing it because you're on the cap table, or you're incentivized to?
Have you thought much about what's happening with the new Reg CF 5 million a year limit and how it's impacting the VC space in general?
No, go on.
So the two most successful Reg CF raises, which to the listeners, if you're not familiar, Reg CF is Reg crowdfunding. You probably have seen something like Seed Invest or Republic pop up on your Facebook feed or somewhere. And it used to be that you can only raise $1.07 million in a Reg CF. Now you can raise up to $5 million per year, which is completely game-changing for the amount of capital that you can raise from essentially your audience.
Per year? Was the 1.07 per year also, and I just didn't know that?
Not really. There's some specifics around integration and some technical things that got waived essentially. But just know that the 5 million per year is the important part. So the people who have raised successfully thus far have not looked like your traditional venture-backed startups. And a lot of people are saying, hey, this is going to be game-changing for venture. Their startups don't need to raise venture capital money anymore. And I think that that's true for the things that don't already exist in the venture ecosystem. If you're going to be a seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, et cetera, startup, this probably doesn't change that much for you. But if you're kind of on the outside of VC, or you're not a A16Z spinoff from an LP, you're going to get a lot more of the Arlens of the world who are being creative and raising outside of the traditional LP structure. You're going to get a lot more of the Sahils who don't take VC funding and do this. And now where I'm getting to back to get to this conversation is, what if gaming, which has traditionally always been seen as non-venture backable, is actually the perfect use case for this new regulatory opening with Reg CF, where you have all these streamers who invest in new games and then all prop them up together?
What a great question you could have asked Chris if you didn't leave me alone to do that interview.
Well, now that we have our new partner in SavvyCal and my calendars are syncing and Zapier is linking all of my calendars, Jay, I'll never have to leave you again for an interview.
Well, this is a very interesting and exciting concept. I actually didn't know it was $5 million per year. I didn't think about the limitations of how many times you could do that, But I didn't realize this new change was also like every year you could raise up to $5 million if you had obviously that interest in that investor base. That's really interesting to me. I would love to actually explore this more on the show. So yes, listeners, if this is a space that you have something to contribute or know someone who can speak to credibly, let's do that. But back to Zach. In his case, Kickstarter didn't go super well. Where do you think that leaves him in like a reg CF world? Do you think that is different when you're, as a gamer, saying, I mean, inherently it's different because this is actual investment into the company and not just rewards based. But I like that as kind of a, Kickstarter is always a marketing strategy more than anything else, more of like validation and marketing. And if that follows over into this reg CF world, this is a really great way potentially to get an initial player base of your game.
Yeah, I mean, everything's an option, right? Kickstarter is a marketing option. I think that Reg CF is an option here, but to prescribe what Zach should do or how it fits, I don't think we asked that question to have a debrief on it. It's just a more general global take here from my perspective that maybe gaming and indie game development studios have more benefits from doing a Reg CF than maybe a traditional B2B SaaS company would, for instance, because inherently there are more people that play the game. They have their audience based in general. Let's go back to Zach and Protoball as a company, though, and talk about the ethos behind the game. I really like how there are so many games that I think we've seen launched even over the last 2 years that are all some variation of the same kind of Fortnite plus Call of Duty formula, where it's the battle royale version of Fortnite and then the first-person shooter vibe of Call of Duty. And maybe it's magic or futuristic guns instead of old guns, but it's all kind of the same thing with like small tweaks. So I like that he has this idea that's different, but not so different that people can't relate it to something. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm a little out of my element here in the gaming world because I'm not close to any of those kind of first person games or even multiplayer. I haven't done multiplayer online in so long. But I know that Rocket League, for example, is really popular. And I think there's probably some really cool opportunity to have this team-based aspect. I bet there was a really cool moment when he and his team saw a player who they didn't know, who started playing the game and was just better at the game than they were as creators. That has to be like such a cool type of experience for them. And something we did ask about that we could talk a little bit more about here in the debrief. He mentioned when they built this from the ground up, they built this engine that other people could then utilize afterwards. And to me, looking at this as a potential business opportunity or investment and thinking about the longevity of the value that's created here, that called out to me as a potential opportunity. But I don't know the space well enough to know how much demand there is for something like that. Like it sounds like a clear opportunity, this kind of picks and shovels thing that we talk about in venture all the time. I just don't know how much of a demand there is from game creators to actually use that.
I wish I had a better example of the metaphor I'm about to lay out to see how valuable this could be. But if you had a musician who came up and they created a new musical instrument, let's say it was like what kind of musical instrument would you create, Jay? Something that's not real right now.
A saxophone keyboard.
Okay, saxophone keyboard. So it's a keyboards instead of the valves, and you're playing it with the blow component and whatever. So someone dominates on that, right? If they can turn that into like a number one hit after number one hit after number one hit, and they become very famous off of it, they could take that saxophone keyboard idea and go sell it out to everyone because they are the ones who came up with it and they made it famous. And it's easier to show other people and say, hey, look at this saxophone keyboard. The person who is just like the all-star of music right now, they did it. I think that's what Epic Games did with Unreal Engine. They made Fortnite. Fortnite took off, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we built that on not a saxophone keyboard, but on Unreal Engine. So everybody said, okay, I can now use Unreal Engine because Fortnite was built on that. And if Fortnite can be built on it, then anything can be built on it. So you need that hit game to validate your underlying engine, I believe.
Seems like an opportunity. I just feel so out of my element here in terms of market size. Like we talked to folks like Josh Chapman of Convoy Ventures, and every time we bring someone in here, or Chris last week, they talk about just the sheer size of the video game industry. So I kind of default to thinking, well, it's huge, but I don't actually know. So In this case, I feel like I can't speak to the size of the opportunity here very effectively, other than conceptually saying, this makes sense to me that there might be an opportunity here. I would just need to do some more exploration to size it.
So in 2018, and this data is a little old, Rocket League made $110 million. And I think that that's probably the best proxy for what this type of game could be. I'm not saying that Rocket League might have made a lot of money since then, but when we're thinking about size, Rocket League in 2018, very large company, got purchased by Epic Games. I mean, that's a pretty large, it's not $1 billion top line selling for $10 billion, but from a game development standpoint with a underlying engine, could it hit $100 million top line? I don't see why not. Gaming is massive.
So when it comes to Protoball, Zach, the company here, what would you be looking for the next 12 to 18 months if you are looking at this as a potential investment?
Launch strategy. I think that understanding who the partners are going to be, who the stakeholders are going to be, how you're going to align all of them to make sure that the game takes off early is going to be the most important thing. Just like when we launch a podcast, Jay, that first couple months matters a lot. You want a lot of hype around launch. You want a lot of people bought in around launch. I think it's the same thing with a video game because you only have so much time to get to the top of the charts and get to the new and trending section to make sure that people are actually downloading your game so that it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle of people saying, yes, I want to download this. And if you miss that window, I think you're kind of doing a relaunch then, and that probably sets you back, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. I wonder what the equivalent in the gaming world of like daily active users is. I guess it's probably like daily active players. But I would want to see that kind of trending positively because the game is available now. So besides the launch strategy, I would want to see how that's trending and think about retention in that way because I think you need a game that's really, really sticky. But I totally agree with the launch strategy point. First and foremost, I look back at eFuse, Matt Benson, who we talked to at CES a couple years ago. Their launch has been incredible. Like they've grown so quickly, and it's been a lot through influencers in the space, and this is in the gaming world, but they've done a lot of partnerships that have helped them quite a bit. And I think that is a huge opportunity for Zach and the Protoball team.
Awesome. Well, I love this interview. I'm so happy we actually got to talk to another game creator here on Upside and talk about the business of developing an indie game. Dear listener, if you are interested in talking more about games, if you have some opinions on games, if you know anybody who we mentioned that would be interesting from a talking about the business of video games and esports side of things, hit us up on Twitter at UpsideFM, or if you have something a little longer, hello@upside.fm, and we will talk to you next week.
That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear what you think about this episode, so tweet at us at UpsideFM or email us hello@upside.fm and let us know. You can learn more about us and browse our entire back catalog of episodes at upside.fm. And if you love our show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That goes a long way in helping us bring high-quality guests to the show.
Rocky and Sylvester, underrated.